Welcome to another episode of Make America Healthy, where our goal is to empower you, inspire you, and educate you with all the tools that you need to lead a healthier, happier, more joyous life, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and on every level. Today's topic is on Eastern medicine, and we are joined by two amazing guests. We have Tsao Lin Moy, who is an alternative and Chinese medicine expert with over 20 years of experience in alternative and Chinese medicine. She founded the Integrative Healing Arts in New York City, where she offers acupuncturist, herbal medicine, and energy healing. And she most recently completed a training in psychedelic therapy with the California Institute of Integral Studies. She specializes in women's health, fertility, anti-aging, stress, anxiety, immunity, and sleep. So things we all need to do better at, and contributes to a lot of different publications and television. We are also joined by Dr. Tom Ingegno, who I probably didn't pronounce that right, who is a doctor of Chinese medicine and the founder of Charm City Integrative Health. He is a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine, integrative medicine specialist, author, public speaker, consultant, and father. And he does a lot of lecturing as well. So welcome to both of my guests. Let's unpack Eastern medicine because I know that is a rather broad term. And I will just personally say that if I come down with something and I'm not feeling that well, which doesn't happen very often, my first stop is always to Eastern medicine, to an acupuncture. Somehow that's where I put my trust and faith. And if you would both just share a little bit of your background and also define what Eastern medicine means to you. And then we'll get into what it means to the rest of the world and how it compares with everything else that's out there. So let's start with ladies first. Tsao, welcome.
Yeah. Okay, this is such a great question. And really, I'm going to use East Asian medicine to include Japan, Korea, and also most of non-Western. And really, the key thing is the mindfulness and the connection to mind-body. Chinese medicine has 8 branches. So the idea is we call it medicine, but really these are ways of looking at living a healthy life to cultivate wellness and health and longevity. So things like food, like how you eat food within season. We're looking at exercise. We're looking at meditation. And then we're also looking at cosmology, which is seasonally. We're looking at feng shui, which is the art and science of placement. And then when you're not well, then you're looking at things to do internally to develop. And then we have acupuncture, herbal medicine, and then body work, which are more when something's not healing on the natural course. And so the idea is we have these tools in which to cultivate this health and wellness.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Tom.
Oh, you know what? So first of all, let me say I'm so happy Cho's here because that was a beautiful explanation. I really think that when we talk about traditional East Asian medicine, and I love that term too, because it is more encompassing. When we look at these practices, it's all inclusive, right? We use this term Yangshen, nourishing life. And that's every aspect of our life. And she touched on all of them brilliantly, right? It's not just what we do to recover from illness, it's what we do to stay healthy. And that's mentally, physically, spiritually. That's going to include movement and exercise, diet, breath work, all of these things. And then we have, I don't want to say stronger, but more heavier interventions when we need to add herbs, when we need to add acupuncture, when we need to do other modalities like Tui Na to get people to recover from things. So the idea is there's a famous physician, and I love this story, Ge Hong, and we all have these tall tales, whether or not they happened, they just give credence. So this Ge Hong was one of 3 siblings. And somebody said, well, you're this famous physician. You must be the best doctor in your house. And he goes, no, actually, my older brother is. He treats before the disease even manifests. And then they go, you got to be better than your middle brother. And he goes, no, he treats at the first onset. And they said, why are you the famous one? And he goes, because by the time they get to me, the illness is already set in and they see me doing all this work. I'm paraphrasing there, but it's more work to take care of yourself when you're already sick than it is to keep yourself healthy. We're talking about investing in our health prior to that.
Exactly. It's so true. And actually, in the classic, the Suen Neijing, so we're getting into like the classics, and they talk about the level of the physician, where they treat one level the symptom, and then the next level the emotional part. And then when they really are treating is at the spiritual level, and that comes to, oh, the physical, oh, you have pain. But then you start to look at what else is in it. The longer something is in the system, becomes an emotional component to it, right? Because if you're not healing within a certain time period, which means your body is not really in balance. So the idea is first you need to get to balance, then you can heal. So what Tom was saying is like, oh, if you're depending on what part of the level of a condition that you're experiencing is going to determine first, you got to get back to a place where you're in a balanced state. It doesn't mean that it's that point where you can feel the illness is lifting, so you've hit a point of balance. But you could easily get sick again if you don't take care of yourself, and then you have to reinforce, to do that so that you store up your reserves, right? Or you don't use your reserves just to stay healthy. And that's really like a very modern thing, is we're always running on adrenaline, not rejuvenating ourselves.
No, I completely get that. I've been practicing yoga and meditation since childhood. I run Yoga Fit, which is the world's largest yoga school. And yet I find myself too, I always say that if energy was currency, I would be perpetually broke because I'll use every single bit of energy that I have. So much like yourself, I grew up in New York City, and you're conditioned and habituated into having a very type A personality there, which even though I spent 20 plus years living in Los Angeles where I started yoga, that's still ingrained within me. And now in my 50s, it's a lot of self-talk to try to get myself to slow down so that I'm not tapping those last bits of energetic reserve. And you both touched on something that I'd like to expand on, and something that I really believe, and that is that every illness has a psychological, emotional, spiritual component. And Tsao, a little bit later, we'll tie that to your psychedelic assisted therapy, which fascinates me. Talk to us a little bit about root cause of illness.
That's such a topic. Again, I would say there are things like being out of balance. So that is the start of not living within nature. And again, that coming back to the Yellow Emperor's Classic, which is like 300 BC. And this is like in the first chapter where they say, like, the question is why the ancients used to live past 100. Now people only live to 50. And really the answer is that today's people don't respect nature. They overeat, they indulge, they drink, they overwork, and then in the end, they burn themselves out. And when I read that, I was like, wait a second. This was actually written down around 300 BC, but obviously an accumulation of many authors. And I was like, that's the same thing. It's now. He's talking about how people don't live according to nature, meaning they don't go to sleep when it's dark, they don't wake up when the sun is up, they don't eat in season, they like all of those things. And that becomes, they say, like the root, because it doesn't seem there's like a cause and effect, like you get hit by a car, but it's really something that's slow. And then another is the most deadly illnesses, or the chronic illnesses, are the ones that the symptom is really tiny because you ignore it. So it's like a termite.
Yeah. So instead of listening to the whisper, then becomes a scream, and then you have to listen, right? And they say that 80% of all adult disease is self-created. Would you both agree with that statement?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So even if your genetics, your DNA has a potential expression of something, read any Bruce Lipton epigenetics, we can outwit our DNA with proper lifestyle. But that for all of us, I think, requires a lot of discipline.
It's not just discipline. We're in an environment, you both mentioned it, right? New York definitely conditions you to be type A.
Yeah.
But there's a certain level of that stress that's been carried, and we can pick any topic. It doesn't matter which side of the fence you fall on it right now. You're constantly bombarded with negative news. You're constantly being told that you need to be more productive. Your value is what you can produce. And that's going to weigh on you. That's going to chip away at you. And that is actually an environmental toxin in itself, right? It's not noise. It's not light. It's not a chemical, but it's going to change your mindset and start wearing you down that way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I don't watch the news. I turned off the news when COVID started. And if I
Good
want to
for
be,
you.
if I deleted all the news apps from my phone, if I wanted to be depressed, I can find a way to do that. I don't need external influences affecting what is for most of us are already a potentially negative brain because it registers 5 negative to everyone positive. We're not blessed with a great operating system.
Yeah. One of the things, and this is what Tom was also talking about, is really like consciousness. I see a lot of people, they're like, oh, I exercise, I do this, I do that. And it's really still that go and get and not really recognize that the power is inside of us. We don't need the things. And like you said, you deleted the apps. It's really that interoception, we understand our body, and also consciously, I'm not going to fill myself with toxicity, including talking to certain people. Talk to someone, and the first thing they talk about is like how the train's not working or all the bad things that are going on that kind of then creates for you energy to not engage it. But also, what I noticed, and this is something I've been doing for the last week and a half, is I stopped looking at any videos on my phone or at home, no Netflix, no Amazon, whatever, no YouTube, just like if I have a meditation one that I'm looking at. But really, I just stopped it because I said, I'm getting these dopamine hits. I feel this thing like I need to pick up my phone. And like my sleep has been so much better. Like in a weird way, I was like, wow, even like you could do all these practices, but there are these things that are overstimulating you. And
Yeah.
really, it's the medium of it. It's not like reading a book till late.
Or the EMFs that we're, constantly being bombarded with
Exactly.
from our
And that,
devices.
yeah, we have no idea that our brain is being like sizzled from our phones and the blue light. So even if you're not looking at negative stuff, you're still being impacted by exposure to screens.
Right. So just jumping topic a little bit, most people, if they have an illness or an issue, they go to a traditional Western doctor, and even like a mental health issue, they're usually given a pill without a full diagnostic on the body as a whole. Maybe that means blood work, maybe a microbiome test, many different systems. Explain to us, one, how, and you both touched on it, how Chinese, Oriental, Asian, Eastern medicine is very integrative mind body. But I know the pulses are taken when you have acupuncture to see what might be off. In Ayurveda, they look at the tongue. I think they do that in Asian medicine as well. Share some differences, and then also who is your demographic? Who typically will go direct to Eastern medicine as a first stop before they go to Western medicine? And is that field gaining in popularity, especially since the pandemic?
You want to go, Tom?
Yeah, sure.
Go first.
I find myself in so much agreement with you that I'm like, yeah, that's right. But it's funny, and we've both been practicing over 2 decades now, and I don't want to speak for you, Chow, but I found that you prove to people, they come in and they see the value in the treatment, and then they start asking you opinions on heavier things, and they continue to come back to you, and they'll call you first. And is this a doctor or is this a you call? Do I need to go to the hospital or is this a you? And you earn that trust and respect over years and years. And I think one of the things that East Asian medicine does well is it's not hanging on one sign or symptom, right? Western medicine is very driven on here's what you're saying, here's what the labs say, here's the disease. And with East Asian medicine, it's okay, that's important. We want to know that. We're not neglecting or negating anything that's coming in from Western medicine. But how is this impacting every aspect of your life? And what other signs and symptoms that don't make sense to a Western mindset fit into this? I'll give you an example. I had a woman come in and she said, my liver's been swelling. They can't tell me why. I do drink a bit. I'm knocking off the alcohol. Weeks later, she comes back and she goes, all right, we got the diagnosis. I know what this is. It was chromatosis. I'm sorry. I'm so bad with that word, but she has to donate blood for a few weeks. Now, oddly, I noted that she had a fatty lipoma, a little lump right near her liver. And she goes, "Oh, the doc didn't say that was related." And I go, "Hey, you came in, the first words out of your mouth were, 'I'm more stressed than I've ever been at work.'" So that's a liver sign, right? This frustration, this anger is how it was manifesting, right? She just wanted to take her boss's head off. And all these checks go in this box, and we start gearing our treatment towards that. So it's not just let's treat the liver, let's take some blood out and fix the red blood cell count. It's how do we support the whole body, the physiological, the mental aspects, and the spiritual aspects as well. So they start coming in for that. Now, we're never going to say don't go see the doctor, but can we find that middle ground? And what I'm finding is a lot of the younger physicians have started to go, yeah, no, there's something to this. There's a huge body of peer-reviewed journals. There's a huge meta-analysis on this specific topic with acupuncture or with Chinese herbal medicine, and they're more open to it. I'm in Baltimore. I'm a stone throw away from Johns Hopkins Medical, University of Maryland, and about 5 other hospitals. And during the pandemic, because you asked about that, the first people to come back in my clinic were those primary healthcare workers. My clinic was full of nurses, NPs, PAs, and MDs that were trying to recover from the stress of watching people die daily. So when that happened, it was a huge boon for our entire field, because now we have those people that would be making those referrals to us experiencing it for themselves. Of a horrible situation, that was a great thing that happened, this shift to we got to own our own health.
Absolutely. And actually, there was a study that came out from Harvard, right? I don't know if you read that one. And that was also part of the NIH, how acupuncture changes neuropeptides in the brain, which then reduce the inflammation and the cytokines. And they said, wow, this could be something really beneficial for people who are experiencing from COVID, having that inflammation. So we start to look at that. And I can also give an example because I treat a lot of fertility. And of course we get, oh, AMH and this and that level, and it means this and it means that. And I'm like, okay, that is really like a symptom of all this other stuff that's going on, such as past history of the eating disorder or different digestive problems and inflammations, which then are going to affect the body. And so what I'll do is I'll look at the whole thing and I'll see these other things on the intake. And you start to realize if this thing doesn't get treated, the other thing is not going to happen, because you're like, oh, this person's not getting sleep, or they have other issues in their digestion. And if this isn't addressed, then the other stuff is not going to really work, or they're going to go through round after round, getting super stressed out, not getting sleep. So if we don't address this, and like sleep, our reproductive hormones are related to the sleep cycle. So if you're having difficulty getting pregnant and you have bad sleep, we really need to address the sleep thing. So all of the hormones in the world you're going to inject are really not addressing this other aspect, which is a really big problem. So this would be where you get the best of both worlds. Right? Because you actually go, oh, we're addressing this thing. Now the medications work better. Now you're responding. It's not about either or.
Yeah.
It's really, okay, how can we navigate where someone is health-wise? If someone's about to go in for gallbladder surgery, I'm not going to say, hey, you could take Mendentong or something.
I have a story for both of you. I have a very good friend. We went to high school together. Her husband had a heart attack, stroke, coma just over 2 years ago, and they wanted to pull the plug. She made the executive decision not to, but he was in a coma for quite some time. And she was able to find a Chinese medicine that is literally translated to wake up from coma. And she put it in his feeding tube in the hospital. I think there was maybe at Beth Israel in New York City. She put it in his feeding tube and he woke up from that coma. She also asked me for some psilocybin mushrooms, and she was putting that in his feeding tube.
It's recent. This is recent.
We're going to get it.
For the neuroplasticity.
Exactly. And we're going to jump into that topic, which I find fascinating. So clearly, the Chinese formula, wake up from coma.
I've heard of this.
Yeah. Obviously, I've been going to since my early 20s, but I know someone who really performed a miracle using Chinese herbs.
Mm.
So, as a very ancient system, one would only think that more people would rely on it as their first stop, as well as a preventative medicine, if you even want to call it that. Cho, I'm really curious about I'm going to call it a transition into the world of psychedelic medicine and how that intersects with Chinese medicine. I'm fascinated by all kinds of mushrooms. I mentioned to you before the show, I'm using some formula for digestion that I got when I was presenting at PsychCon in Colorado. And apparently, there's been like 5,000 articles written about this one mushroom. There's cordyceps and lion's mane and turkey tail. Can you give us a rundown and then share with us how the psychedelic integration is working? And was that part of Oriental medicine at one point?
Okay, absinthe. Is that right? Like,
yeah, okay, let's start with absinthe. This is fun.
The absinthe was like, what's it called?
Joan, Artemisia.
Yeah, the Artemisia. The Artemisia. So that's something that is in some of the materia medica. Mm-hmm. Or really with things like herbs and mushrooms, they're aside from like cooking, most things are never used as standalone. Mm-hmm. And who would really use something like that in like the sages maybe would have those experiences, and this is in all traditional and indigenous cultures, is really making that connection to plants somehow and communicating. So the materia medica has like a phenomenal amount of information about herbs individually, and then when you combine them, it is so broad that even now Western science can't figure out how did they have this amount of knowledge. And really what we know is that in the ancient times, people really connected with nature, which would mean that they would sit in front of a plant. And in traditional cultures, can I eat you? Yes, you can, or respectfully. They take the piece, they would chew it and meditate on it, and the information would come. We look at animals have that ability to navigate around in their environment. We have lost that. We don't have the same level of consciousness. And again, getting back to health and consciousness, when we take something in our mouth, we're just like stuffing ourselves to be full. But really, are we really tasting the food, connecting so much that we can understand where is it going in our body? What is it actually doing for us? Where are we having that experience? We have it with things like coffee and sugar, stimulants. Getting back to the mushrooms.
They're like one of the oldest substances on the planet, is that correct?
Yes. And they actually, so we have much more of an ability, or like things like also cocaine, nicotine, chocolate, right? We can feel the difference of them because we need something strong to feel it now. Yeah. What we're looking at is with the mushrooms now, we can actually, with modern science, take pictures of what's actually happening in the brain. And to be like, oh, really interesting. That's how this experience is. Now we're able to track. These have always been beneficial. We don't know why people in, let's say in Japan, they mostly vegetarian, they eat lots of mushrooms. Like my teacher, Kiko Matsumoto, loads of mushrooms is good for your liver. It's good traditionally, but did they know that it's going to help with fatty liver? No.
So I have a question for you, because so many companies right now are individualizing these mushrooms, where I literally have bottles of lion's mane in my vitamin cabinet and shiitake and all of that. Cho, because you're studying psychedelic medicine, are you using medicine to heal people of physical issues or just mental health challenges?
Okay, so everything we experience is in the body. But what I say is in New York, it's not legal. So there are only a couple of places.
Let's pretend that you had your practice in Denver, Colorado.
Okay, in Denver or in Oregon. Yeah. All right, so this is where my interest in this area is, because this is really like looking at personalized medicine. And with the different conferences in the research, my classmates
were you at MAPS, by the way?
Yeah, MAPS trained also huge, 12,000 people. Yeah. So one of the things with a lot of the physicians being trained, they're like, okay, what's the dose? How much? How long? How many sessions? And each person is different, how they're going to respond and what's going to come up for them. And it's really their journey. And really the body intelligence is going to say, I think I have this issue. They'll go into an experience and something else comes up. And again, getting back to, if you don't treat this like your sleep, then this other stuff isn't going to move forward. So what someone might think, this is my problem, what happens is that inner healer says, I think you need to look at this first. And so with all of the planning that goes into it, some of the, I would say, like complaints or the reports, they're like, then this is personalized medicine. Yes, it is. Studies show when they're doing the research and then how they do the setup of the container and how they play the music and how long. So really what can they say is a dose might last a certain period of time. They may have certain experiences, but for the most part, it's really personalized. Getting back to physical things after a prolonged period of time are emotional. And then also we look at the body keeps score.
Yes.
Right? So we hold stuff. We've got body armor. We hold stuff. Someone has digestive problems, intestinal or stomach. We're looking at, that's more metal things. Can they let go of things? Or are they holding on to grudges?
And the liver is anger, is that correct?
It can be any emotion that gets stuck for a long period of time, like even grief will turn to anger.
So what I'm hearing is with the use of let's say psychedelic mushrooms, if we are able to release and then process those emotions, oftentimes the physical body will just naturally heal itself. Is that correct?
Our body does naturally heal.
Mm-hmm.
And then
this is somatic medicine, isn't
it? Medicine, I love that.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The beauty of Chinese medicine, and Tom, I'm going to guess that you're going to agree, is that the language is metaphoric, right? So one of the things, the different meridians are like rivers and springs, and how we equate it to the different seasons in nature and different types of
12 channels for each month. We try to get to 365 points in a standardized system for the days of the year.
Yeah. So all of those things take you out of a Western pathologizing of broken and fix. We're looking at there's cycles to things. And so if we can understand that our body has cycles like and related to the seasons that we actually can see that are there and how we live accordingly, then it's a very different experience of broken and fix. So that's what we're looking at in the psychedelic medicine or assisted therapy is that they can't use that model, even though the clinical trials are based on typically drug trials of, okay, we're going to patent this thing and you give X amount and then they get better. But it's really, I would say, a challenge in that because the people that are getting trained are not accustomed like we are to really being with somebody in their messiness, right?
And one other thing I just want to clarify, obviously here in Western medicine, the drug companies get patents on certain formulas and sell them until the patents expire, and then everybody has a generic variation. Chinese herbs, Asian herbs, they're readily available, is that correct? And not just put out by Eli Lilly or whatever.
It's funny because, they're readily available. There's a lot of patents, but to speak to that customization, you can walk into Asian grocery store and pick up some of the major ones, but the high level practitioners are going to modify those formulas. And what Cho was speaking to was this N=1 kind of idea, right? When we do a study, when we're trying to patent a drug, when we're practicing what they would call the harder medicines, when we talk about psychology, when we talk about psychedelics, when we talk about acupuncture, we're talking about a softer medicine, right? We want the big study to show, yes, in general, this is safe and this works for a lot of people. But even when we read fertility studies, I wouldn't do that for that patient. This was the points you did. And you look at it, you go like, 3 of these points are contraindicated for pregnancy. And you did them in the study and you still got good results. So when we're talking about that for herbs, it's the same thing. Yeah, this one might be safe for everybody. It might help a lot of people. But if it's not made for you, if it's not put together with you in mind, and maybe I increase the dose on this one and decrease the dose on that one. And even with talking about set and setting, which she was doing with psychedelics, right? That has as much to do with the outcome of the treatment as to what type of psychedelic you give and what dose, right? So there's all these softer variables that I think at the root of traditional medicines across the world, that relationship. I had a friend of mine who he actually has a couple of PhDs, and one of them's in psychedelics. I said, should I find a shaman to experience this? And he goes, what tribe are you? A shaman is somebody that grew up in your village. He knows all the people in that village. He's had an experience with those people. He knows you, your culture. You fly down to the Amazon and do ayahuasca if you want to, but you're doing tourist medicine.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that per se, but this is not the same as this person has been a part of your life, your culture, and your personal journey your whole life. And I think that's where it gets dangerous when we start studying it from a Western standpoint, right? We want the knowledge, we want to understand what's going on, but we don't
and we want the results, and we want them quickly.
Yeah. There are a couple of things that I would say. One, about the herbs, like one of the things in East Asian medicine is you don't take herbs like a supplement, right? As you get better, you're going to change them, or you're not going to use them, or you're going to guide the person out so that they can go back to that place of balance. And then,
and would you say that too for Ayurvedic herbs like Shilajit or ashwagandha? I'm not sure how familiar you are with Ayurveda.
There's some crossover with certain herbs.
With some, yeah, there's some, but I'm not familiar with the ashwagandha. And some of my patients that are from India that are looking at them like, oh, it looks similar. But what I would say about the tourism, there are a few things that we don't have in the West that they do have when you do travel to the Amazon and you work with indigenous healers. So I actually went this past March. And so for me, I understood a lot of what they call the Aine is really like being in relationship with the medicine and also with nature. So the idea, what are you doing for nature? Are you just taking? What do you do to give back? Because in traditional culture, what you're going to give back is your body into the ground, which is going to nourish, and then you become part of the cycle of life. So a lot of the practices, which we always like, oh, it's spiritual, it's this, is really about preparing yourself, your body, for receiving the knowledge. And so this is, again, getting back to that kind of consciousness. We don't have really that tradition in the West, but these other groups do, and it's in the group and the community. So what we're really lack is this kind of community consciousness around a healthier life and support with each other. There are people that go down for tourism and do that, but I think it's also the intention of what you're going to do with the plant medicine.
Everything is intention. Right. Unfortunately, we have to stop here. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Life Boost Coffee, the cleanest, most delicious, mold-free, non-toxic coffee you'll ever drink. They have over 25 different flavors. We're coming out with a mindfulness blend at Life Boost that's half calf. I actually designed it, and they pay their farmers an equitable wage. It's shade-grown coffee. When you taste good coffee, you'll know the difference. So check out Life Boost Coffee. You can save 15% at checkout by using the code YOGA. Coffee is something that many of us do every day. So if you're going to do it the best way and get some Life Boost. We'd also like to thank our sponsor, Yoga Fit Training Systems, the leader in yoga, mind, body, fitness education, hosting conferences, online education, corporate wellness, yoga for healthcare workers, and so much more. You can go to yogafit.com. My books are on Amazon. You can find me at bethshaw.com or on Instagram at bethshawhealth. And I'd like to know where we can find you.
Okay, you can find me on my website, which is www.integrativehealingarts.com. So that's probably like the easiest if you want to contact
I'm going to
me.
come see you next time I'm in New York for sure.
Definitely.
And Dr. Tom, where can we find you?
All right, charmcityintegrative.com is the best place to find me. Everything we have going on at our clinic, my book releases, all that stuff will be listed there.
Wonderful. This will all be in the show notes as well as everyone's social media handles. So thank you. This has been a very interesting show, very enlightening. I wish we had a lot more time for it. If you enjoyed this show, please share it with many people. And until next time, everyone, stay healthy, stay happy, take care of yourself, and keep educating yourself because your health is your most valuable asset always. Namaste, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.